Today we've got the Kolink Observatory HF mesh. Comes in a couple of different colours and styles. This is a £50 case that comes with 6 fans. I'm really looking forward to checking this out. This could be one of the best bang for buck cases that I've seen yet. Kolink also sent over some power supplies and also a cooler. We're going to do a build with all of this stuff, so get subscribed if you did the mouse so you didn't miss that. But for now, let's take a look at this case. Okay, so it had some polystyrene either side just to protect it. It is very light, but it is a £50 case. I've not looked at anything to do with this case other than just the specs and the price. So we're going to go through this together, take a look. So first of all, it seems pretty well made considering it's a cheaper case. A little bit of flex in the back, but you generally do see that with cheaper cases anyway. So let's start along the top as we'll do with any other case. We've got all of our I/O on the top. So there's a USB 3, we've got 2 USB 2s, microphone, headphone combo jack, reset button, then a power button. Feels like quite a nice button actually as well. We've also got a magnetic dust filter on there. Then there's 2 pre-installed 120mm fans. These are the Umbra fans that Kolink make. You can of course swap those out if you'd rather and go for 2 140mm, or you can put up to a 280mm AIO in the roof. At the front of the case we have got 3 pre-installed 140mm fans, again the Umbra ones from Kolink. This panel does come off so we can get access to those fans. You can see there are RGB ones as well. We'll cover the connections and things when we get to the back. Pretty basic fans, but to be included with the case I think is a real nice bonus. On the bottom of the case, not too much to talk about, just the feet and then also the bits to remove the drive cage. And there's a little filter for the power supply air intake as well. On the back we've got the 120mm rear exhaust, where our I/O will be on the left hand side. We've got 7 expansion ports. This is a little bracket that you have to undo to take these brackets out. You can just punch these out and then obviously use the ones that you need. Then at the bottom we've got where our power supply is going to go. This will take up to a 180mm power supply in this case. You can obviously take out the hard drive cages though if you want a bit more space for cables. So I've taken off the bit of tape to stop the glass opening. Now we can actually open this up. A little bit of 3mm tempered glass comes out very easily as well, so you can do all your cables and stuff without having to worry about this. Got it hanging off the side. So inside the case you can do support for up to an E80X motherboard. Pretty surprising considering the price of this case. I don't think it's something you'd actually do considering they are really expensive to get E80X boards. You're probably going to get something a little bit more expensive if you're going to do a big rig like that, but the option is there. As you can see we've got all of our pre-installed fans in the front. There's the 3 140s, the top 2 120s and the rear 120. All of the cabling and stuff we'll look at on the other side in a minute. We have got some additional mounts as well on the power supply shroud. If you want to add additional 2 120s you can do that there. There's also a couple of mounts for drives directly on the motherboard tray as well. Kolink say you can do either 2 3.5 or 2 2.5 inch drives on there. You've also got the hard drive cage on the back that I mentioned as well. There's a couple of cutouts for any cables to go through at the top. There's a little power supply cutout so you can see the brand and things through there. Then there's also a couple of cutouts for your cables to come up, like front panel, USB headers and things like that. Then on the right hand side we have got a bit more space if you wanted to install a radiator. Maybe you might go budget water cooling in this case. You can install a pretty thick radiator there if you want to. In terms of the maximum heights for your CPU towers, you can do a maximum of 160mm. So the NHU12A is what I'm going to be testing in this. So that should fit without any problem. And HD15 is going to be a little bit too big though. For those of you that are wondering about graphics cards and things, this is the 4070 Ti Tough Edition. That will fit in there without any problems at all. You have got 330mm of space for your graphics cards, but clearly the ROG Strix is a little bit too big. Onto the back of the case we've got a bag with some basic screws and then a few zip ties. We've got another slate for 2 more SSDs. The hard drive cage in the bottom there supports the 3.5 inch drive if you want to use that. You can put a 2.5 in there if you'd rather. All of the cables for the fan seem to be on a daisy chain, which is going to make life a lot easier. Then we have got a single SATA for power at the very end. It turns out the reset button is actually attached to the RGB control, so it's going to make life a lot easier rather than using software to control it. You can also use the 5V adjustable if you'd rather do software control, so you can easily plug that into your motherboard header. Then last but not least we've got the other headers. So we've got one for the HD audio USB 2 headers. We've got all the front panel ones. Then we've also got the USB 3 header. So I'm now going to put my CPU cooler test rig into this so I can give you an idea of thermals. I'm going to run some benchmarks and things like that, so I can give you a full review of what I think, especially with the building experience rather than just an overview. So now I'm going to get that all set up, run some benchmarks, and I'll be back to give you my overall thoughts. Okay, so a little bit of a conclusion for the Kolink Observatory HF mesh. One thing that I failed to mention at the start is this is available in a black and a white version if you want to go for a white build. Also get a glass front rather than mesh, but personally I'd recommend that you go for the mesh one whereas the fans aren't quite as high performance as they are a budget fan. The temperatures can get a little bit higher, so I'd recommend getting as much air through the case as you can. So the actual build experience, first of all, there wasn't any standoffs included for the ATX, so you do need to add those in yourself. I would like to see them pre-installed, being that this is a budget case. A lot of people will be buying it for their first builds, beginner builds and things like that. If you screw directly into the motherboard tray without the standoff, you're going to short something out, so that will be an expensive mistake. So please make sure you install those if you're using a full-size ATX board. But Kolink, please do add them in. I know it will cost a little bit extra, but I think it's worth it to make sure there's not going to be any accidents with shorts. Next of all, EPS connectors, do put those in before you put the motherboard in to the rear I/O slot, because it's really difficult to get them in otherwise, unless you've got really small fingers. I did take the fan out and try and do it that way, but I still couldn't get them in, so I had to draw back to putting the whole motherboard out, plugging those in, then putting it in afterwards. So just something to bear in mind, because there's not a lot of clearance at the top. Next up, the PCI brackets. I don't know if you can see on this camera here, but the top one's a little bit bent where I was trying to take the other ones out, but you can't actually put them back in once you bend them out, so just something to bear in mind. They are pretty flimsy, and just be careful you don't scratch any surface mount devices that are on the motherboard as well. Something you can possibly do if you try and take them out once you've installed your motherboard. But you can't put them back in, so make sure you take out the right ones. Slots 2 and 3 for an ATX board, and then slots 1 and 2 for an RTX, MATX. But if in doubt, just measure it, put the board in, see which ones you're going to need to take out first, and then take your board out and then do it. Lighting control, like I said, at the back of the case, it is adjustable on the reset. I'll just cycle through a few different options so you can see what's on there. But I've picked the kind of Spectrum Wave, which I think is the nicest one. I've got some static options in there though, if you like something that's not all unicorn puke, but for the majority, I think that's the nicest effect that there is. Then those fans are running at 1500 RPM on the SATA daisy chain that I showed you at the back, just full chat 100% all the time. There's no PWM control or anything like that, which I would like to see, but it is a value case. It's not too loud though, considering they are running 100% 1500 RPM, but they are, like I said, a more budget fan rather than a performance one, so they're not going to move that much air, so the noise isn't going to be that high either. So for temperatures, we did a Cinebench 10-minute run. We got a high of 80.8 for that, with a delta of 60.2, taking away the ambient of the room. For a bit of context, the H6 gave a 76.3, so a few degrees warmer, but the case is half the price and the fans are half the price. So very good, I think, considering the hardware that we're using, which is the 5800X3D, known to be on the warmer side in some scenarios. And then we've also got the RTX 3080 Tough Edition. Last little thing, average temperature was 60.2 minus the room, gives a delta of 19.6. Some people are asking about those now, so I just thought I'd add that in as well. It's been sat for about an hour and a half, so it's a fairly good average. But overall, the case I think is pretty good for the price. Certainly a good bang for buck case. 6 fans, tempered glass, got a nice I/O on the top there as well. Fairly easy to build in. A couple of little niggles, like I said, but things that will hopefully either be sorted out or just make sure you know about them, especially if you're going to be doing your first build in this. Make sure you add in those standoffs, because you don't want any shorts happening. But yeah, cracking little case, certainly recommend it. I'll leave the links in the description box if you want to pick one up. Got any more questions, do leave them in the comments box below and I'll get back to you. Big thank you to Kolink for sending this out for me to look at. Stay tuned and get subscribed and ding the bell so you don't miss the build that I'm going to be doing with this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.